welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode, and now a man who, if he had a boat, would name it either Botox or the C word. A man who needs no introduction. The C word. The C word.
C word with an S. Going.
All right. Man, let's go ahead and get into it, man. I always.
Hey, if I was gonna get a ski boat, it would be called Skiing Tut. Like King Tut, skiing Tut. But we'll see.
Exactly. Someday. There you go. Trees. All right.
The C word would probably be the winner, though.
So I always like when Niddy does these dwell streams. I think it's kind of interesting to have somebody that we know kind of documenting what's going on in the cult they just left. So I don't know, Niddy, if you're here in chat, if you join us, you could pop in if you'd like. But yeah, I always enjoy when he talks about the church that he just left. And so this stream is called Niddy Dishes More Dirt on Dwell. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it.
Good evening, everyone. It's your host with the most, without the Holy Ghost.
Hey, Mojo.
Nidamos. Okay.
UC Love, Trees, good to see everybody.
What's all this about? What are we doing? Why is this stream called a dance party pre-show? Why bother? Well, I'll tell you why. We have this amazing space. It's called Gather, and it's where we can actually hang out and talk together without the pretense of it being a live show or a backstage or something getting recorded that we don't want to be recorded. And it's a great place for us to hang out, watch what each other are watching on YouTube or movies, or listen to music together. And that's the plan tonight. Tonight, I will be doing a DJ set in the Gather space. Link is in the chat, and I might as well pin it in the chat as well. So let's pin that sucker. And I'll be copying the link in the description of the video. And here's how this goes. I play music for about 2 hours. You can hang out with people on the dance floor, listen to what they're listening to, listen to me playing music, mixed together, various genres. I go from hip hop to techno, disco, funk. Like it's a good time. It's a good time. You should check it out. Okay. But the other part of the stream title is just as important, because we can't make it 24 hours sometimes.
All right, so real quick, just for those that are not familiar, I have the Gather link pinned in the chat here. It's also down in the description where it says link up with the gang. So look, what Niddy's talking about is important. You know, it's like it's like having a virtual. We're actually broadcasting. We're in Gather now. You can see this what Gather looks like. My one black friend and I are hanging out in the cafe, but we're here around the clock, right? So I'm always in here. Most of someone usually is always in here. We're always doing stuff. And so it's just hard because a lot of people are so used to YouTube, they don't realize what a difference maker Gather is. It's not just like somewhere to do our shows from, but it's where we actually spend a lot of time together. So we have meetings every week. I guess we'll probably meet at 8 p.m. tonight. We normally meet at 8 or 9. Niddy does dance parties, but we also use this space as a virtual office. We play games in here. We watch movies and TV shows. We watch sporting events. We'll be watching the NBA playoffs tonight. So do give, gather, try. Click the link. I'll probably do a tutorial at some point during the week. But the main point I want to make to people is YouTube's not a great platform for community building. It's really nice that people have found a community on YouTube, if that's like an atheist community or whatever. But you have to remember the interactions are very one way. Like, you don't actually get to see and talk directly to each other. And so, I just think people really need to understand that there are limits inherent in YouTube, like where somebody has to be live and putting on a show, and it's mostly a one-way flow from streamers to the audience. And give, gather, try. It's really a lot better. It's an application designed for team building, and we're there even when we're not live, and we think you'll enjoy interacting with the community that way. All right, let's go ahead and let Niddy jump into what he's talking about from Dwell.
Times without something else that we learn about my former church community that should bother Christians, and especially the ones that were a part of it.
Thanks, Trees.
So yesterday I came across a post of screenshots of emails.
And yeah, having Niddy DJ and gather feels rather luxurious. Having Niddy do such killer sets every week really does feel special. So thanks a lot, Niddy.
A leader of one of these ministry houses that you guys should be familiar with from my other channel content. And what this is basically a conjoined living situation for people of the same cisgender to live together, hang out, and do the Jesus stuff together.
Do the Jesus stuff.
And this email exchange.
So I'm really familiar with this ministry house thing. My grandparents, most of my life, most of life they lived in a family home, but there was always a church house attached to the church property. And then when I worked at a church, there was so much situation where there was a house on the church property, and all of the young men that were on staff, except me, and one other person lived there. And then they rented like an apartment about literally like a block or so away, that all of the females on staff lived in together. And so there was very much that, the boys' house and the girls' apartment type of situation. And that was like a big part of that experience. Like, I lived on my own because I just was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I rented my own place, but it's also because I had another job, like I bartended and stuff, so I had other sources of income. But yeah, this is just really big with churches, right? They're still into this control stuff. They're still into separate, of course, there's only two genders, okay, as he created them, male only or female only, that's it. And then they're only supposed to come together under the pretense of marriage, and they keep them separate. It's just so weird. And then even the church I played drums at was this way, where when we socialized, like, I was the oddball out because I talked to all the women and the younger women too, like the college age ones. And I'm like, y'all are weird. Like, it's so weird. Like, I mean, to the point, like, things get more co-ed as you get older, but that's only because the presumption is you're dealing with families. So like, literally, if you have an adult Bible study, it'll be co-ed, men and women together. But the assumption is that that's because they want, like, husband and wives in the same small group, right? But when you go to the college Bible studies, they're all male or all female. And so then when we would get together for, like, social events, like parties, like, let's say somebody just has a party or something in their house, it would be weird because, like, the older, say, couples and families, they might be, like, in the main room watching the game together or whatever, right? But then when you look at the college students, the girls are all sitting around a table talking to each other, and then the boys are, like, in the kitchen arguing about apologetics and philosophy and stupid shit, right? And it'd just be like, I'm obviously not gonna do that. Like, especially because all those girls over there, like, are students at our university and part of our college ministry. So why you don't talk to them but it's weird. And I don't know, like, it's just the whole thing. It's like the cult is obsessed with sex, but it also keeps you from gaining any healthy experience interacting with presumably the people they think is in your marriage pool or whatever. It's just weird. Mm-hmm. It's just weird, and it just needs to be talked about more because it's subtle, but it's, like, part of the whole thing. And even it's like enough alone that I think we should tear Christianity down, because sexual repression is so toxic.
It will destroy itself. Doesn't need any help.
It will.
Well, now that the internet is here, it will destroy itself.
But think about that. Think about, like, how important it is if, you know, you're interested in having a family or, you know, romantic relationships, which not everybody is. But, you know, like, to grow up and then go through all these critical stages and, like, not learn how to properly socialize. Like, I feel like I'm still recovering from that.
Well, I went to a church that was very much promoted the men group together, the women group together as well, here in Los Angeles. And when you went out on dates, one thing they had is you were encouraged, if anyone asked you to go out on a date, you should say yes. Even if they weren't your type, just say yes. So I kind of did like that idea. And yet but there's things about it I didn't like. Because they encourage you. Well, you basically had to go on a double date. You couldn't just take anybody out by yourself.
Yes.
They wanted you to double date or triple date or group date, whatever.
Date, yeah.
And I'm thinking, I always get screwed on the group date because I end up paying for other people's stuff. I'm a generous guy, but I want a choice when it comes to me being generous. So I would often get screwed on paying for other people's stuff. And that just made it bad for me. Plus, I didn't want to feel like I needed to be watched or chaperoned. Some people probably did.
But that's what it's all about.
I wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
Well, I looked at it as like, okay, you're trying to exercise too much control.
Right.
You know, I got pretty good self-control. You guys are overstepping your bounds.
Yeah. No, I did. Yeah, I've done a lot of these experiences, but yeah, it's part of the culture, and I just think it's important to take notice of some of the less discussed insidious aspects of Christianity. All right, let's hear more about this cult.
Which contradicts a lot of what my former fellowship likes to tell the news media. So they have documented on tape for our local news stations, quote, from Elder Gary DeLashmet, removing someone from fellowship does not mean shunning them. Oh boy, that's so false.
Can we just call out word games? Can we just say right up front, that's a word game?
Right up my alley, yeah.
That's a word game. Dismembered. What is it? Taking some, run that back.
Removing, rewind.
Or our local news stations, quote from Elder Gary DeLashmet: removing someone from fellowship does not mean shunning them.
This fellowship is not shunning. Hilarious. You know, this is just more that double talk. They're liars. I don't know, man. They're just liars. They're liars. It's just a lie.
Oh boy, that's so false.
It's so hard to just call out dishonesty.
Pastor who has no official church or theological credentials whatsoever said that everyone is invited to participate up to their own comfort level when denying members are pressured to give up their free time or cut ties. And he's denied that members are pressured to give up their free time or cut ties with anyone. Elder James Rochford agreed with this gentleman.
I was going to say,
go ahead.
The fact that people could say, but Jesus died for your sins. And before I realized, but wait, it was about 3 days. There was that in the place where I was, there was that sort of guilt that you are not doing your part to support the organization.
Right.
If you don't pitch in, if you don't do this, if you don't, and I was just like, ugh. It did feel like a lot of pressure, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And my one black friend, we have that curse that, we are decent atheists, but we also would have been pretty goddamn good preachers. So let me tell you how it works. It works with the plausible deniability. Pastor could come right out like, now I'm not telling you what to do with your time, right? But if you think the Lord has blessed you now, how much more would he bless you if you
will open the
really serve the church? Now, I know that you get up every day and you go to work, and I know a lot of y'all in this room are tithing Christians. But is that really going the extra mile for Jesus as he sacrificed for you? I mean, if you're just going to the job you would be going to anyway, and then just giving God his 10%. But what are you really doing to serve him? Right? So, gang, they're not going to, quote unquote, tell you what to do. They're just going to make you feel like shit that you are not dedicating every single area of your life to Jesus at all times, always. And so there's always the pressure to do more. It almost sounds like a joke, because anybody that's really seriously participated in the church knows that there's like a constant pressure to do more for Jesus. It's like the whole thing, the whole time, everything they do, right? Like, it's so weird.
Pocket locker. Will a man rob God? Yet you, what does the scripture say? Yet you, and then the whole church, have robbed me. They know it. But you say, in what have you robbed me? And then the church, it tithes an offering. Then can I get an amen? Then there's a amen. You are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me. Even this whole nation, church, if you are not prospering, the reason is that you are not giving.
Yes.
So if you want to be free from the change, you gotta give up more than change.
Right.
So the plate will go around in a few minutes. Please stretch yourselves, knowing that God is reaching down to you, but your arms are so short. You need to stretch.
Yeah.
Church.
It gets sinister too, to tie back to the whole separation and church houses and all of this stuff too, because part of what they're doing is they're doing a lot of signaling and narrative building from the pulpit. And part of that is I get my young men and my young women to primarily socialize separately with very limited interaction, right? Then in public, I get to set the stage for how they interact. And so what I get to do then is tell these young ladies, well, you can't expect to have a godly family. You can't expect your family to be blessed unless you partner up with a blessed man. You can't be unequally yoked to some sort of heathen and then turn around and be surprised why he's not a good father. Can I get a witness from the congregation, right? And then what is that then doing? That is me telling the women in front of the young men, these men ain't unless they get right with God. So now what do I get to tell the young men? Oh, you think you just get to show up with your Bible and your crucifix necklace on, sing a couple of songs on Sunday, and then you gonna take home one of these godly young ladies we got up in here? Oh, no. You want one of these beautiful, lovely, godly young things up in here. Brother, you need to seek your walk with the Lord first. Right? So then you're getting the signal that you're not even a real Christian man, right? Unless you're serving the church, unless you're seeking elevation in the church, unless you're doing a mission on the worship team, leading the Bible. You got to be doing something to seek, right? Because again, otherwise, you're just a pew filler, so you don't have status, right? This is a status game, right? And they're basically telling you, look, you could go out there, get a law degree, become a provider, go to medical school, whatever you think is going to make you a good man. Look, bruh, if you don't break Jesus off with his peace, if you don't, so I mean, that is literally, people don't talk about it, but I call it, that's fertility cult. Right? That's getting to lay the land of who gets to reproduce with who under what conditions. And again, it tells people you have to serve the church without telling them you have to serve the church. Right? They don't come out and say it, but they say everything else.
Well, there's a psychological component where people have something you want, and you have to figure out, like the rat or the crow or the raven has to figure out what they need to do to get the treat. Hey, if I do this certain behavior, here's the reward for it. So if I participate in all this stuff, I finally get to talk to those godly women that are supposedly better than women of any other stripe. Right.
I'm
just not going to do better than this selection that has been set aside for me. They're not sitting in another church. They don't work at Baskin Robbins. They don't work at a local bank. They don't work at the stadium. I'm not going to see them at the gym.
They're not your classmates and none of that. Right.
Yeah, they're right there in that group. And, in some congregations, women and men don't even sit together. Islam has that. Women are in a separate part of the church. Now, I've had Muslims explain to me, I haven't had Christians explain it to me this way, but it may be the same reasoning. It's a very humble reason. Well, you don't want those young men or any men lusting after those women. You want them to be able to fully devote themselves to God. Same with the women. You don't want them distracted by some man that they see or men that they see. You want them fully devoted to God. They've come to the to the mosque to worship, and that's got to be okay. When I went to a synagogue, even the men and women there didn't sit together. So, and I was a guest. I'm like, where's my friend who is a woman who had invited me? She wasn't sitting next to me. She was sitting in a different part. And I thought, well, this is out of my experience.
Right. Yeah. It's really, this is very deep. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because it's deep in throughout the mechanisms of a lot of these faiths. So, don't go so quickly pointing the finger at some of these conspicuous examples that are in the news. This is something that's in a lot of these faith traditions.
Come in and said, people can choose their own level of involvement, just like anything else in life. And later in that same response paper, he says, regarding individual relationships, we teach that the application
AR said maybe it's hard to tell. Hang on a sec, y'all. Thanks for the answer, AR. But let me just elaborate on the question of the day. Do you think your former church was part of a massive corporate operation? I get the feeling with Dwell, right? Niddy's told this story a lot, like not a lot, but like he's basically talked about, Dwell had, they were growing, they're doing this big thing, then, they got in a little bit of trouble, right? So then the whole thing kind of had to get rebranded. And then, when that got a look, then there's been little spin-offs and campuses. And I think it's part of a big trend in Christianity, even the church I was a part of, like they move away from denominations, right? They don't call themselves, Third Southern Baptist Church of Indiana anymore, right? They all have some brand, right, that you can't even tell what it really means. It's very loose with the denomination affiliation, if any. It's probably never mentioned, right? You probably have to do some digging. Like you have to ask around to figure out what denomination they consider themselves, or read a statement of faith during the membership class and some stuff like that, right? And then what you'll notice is, you'll notice there's a model, right? Like my church was part of something that's basically like franchising. Like they have this model where you build a local church near a major university, because those are the meccas of sin. And then you establish a campus ministry there. So then all the campus ministries all have the same name. The churches all have different local names, and then they have like these big conferences and stuff, and then every year they're like planting more churches nationally and internationally, and they're like literally trying to take over the world with this stuff, right? And it's you realize at some level this is a major like corporate operation, and I think this is the direction churches are going. And so it's just interesting to see if people feel like their church is part of that. A lot of denominations are kind of doing this too, but it's getting really big in the evangelical spaces. All right.
Conscience of the member. That is, we teach biblical passages on the subject of fellowship and intimacy and commitment level. And members need to choose what level of initiation they want to take with a person removed from fellowships. And so that's also with like the idea of removing someone from the church. And when we look at this email exchange, you're going to find that every single piece of bullshit that Dwell tells the news and gaslights to their fucking members that, oh, it's always been your choice. It's always been up to you. We're not going to excommunicate you or no longer associate with. No. This has all been your choice. This has all been fine. You agreed to this, right? And your interpretation of the biblical text on how much you should be involved and what to do with people we asked to not be here anymore, follow your conscience, follow your heart. That's what they'll say in like a fucking email or to the news. You want to know the reality on the ground from home group to every home group? No, biblical passages are not up to your fucking interpretation or your conscience. You either get with the program or you get out. No, it's not all your choice. You decide, well, maybe I don't want to go to prayer meeting every week, which is like the fifth or sixth thing I do in the church every week. Maybe I don't want to go to the Just Men's group every week. Because again, it's the fifth or sixth thing that I'm doing with the church for
can you pause it?
More than a few hours.
Okay. So in fairness to the Christian contract, if you will, when you became a Christian, you had supposedly turned your life over to Christ. So whatever the individual Christian bosses decide you're supposed to be doing, As long as it's not immoral, you're supposed to be doing it. You know, the church gives, God has appointed leaders for you, and you're supposed to follow what they say, because why? They are supposedly telling you and guiding you in the will of God, day to day, week to week, you know, career decisions, marriage decisions. You're supposed to listen to them and follow what they say, and not necessarily do so without question. But if it's sound advice, you're probably supposed to take it. So in a way, they got you. It's a bit like the military. In one sense, you belong to them until you leave. You know, until they tell you you're done. You know, we're discharging you honorably or dishonorably, or you retire and then get discharged that way. And believe me, I've been told they can still call you even after you retire. You may have some expertise that they need. So just keep that in mind, folks. That beautiful Stevie Wonder lyric, make sure you're sure.
Absolutely.
You'd make that decision to scale back your involvement in those areas. Not only is your relationship with God put into question, it's
cheers, gang.
You're very well. Sorry, not only is your commitment in question, it's your very relationship with God. Oh, what do you mean you don't want to pray with everyone every week? Are you backsliding? Are you getting away from Jesus? What do you mean you don't want to spend time with the men 5 hours on a Friday night? What are you trying to alienate yourself or get more in the world? What's wrong with you? God has gifted you with these people. How dare you not spend more time with them? What? What part of that is not pressure? Oh, yeah, you didn't come to this thing again? Well, not your friends anymore. We don't want you anyway. Not coming to prayer every week? Oh, I guess you're not that invested in Jesus now. Oh, you don't want to disciple someone for 6 hours a week? Oh, I'm sorry. Wow. You have a real lackluster commitment to Jesus.
Pause it, please. Okay. I'm not disagreeing with the way Niddy is taking all this, but I'll go back to what the Bible says. Jesus has that story with the rich young ruler where the guy wants to follow Jesus. Sell all you have. You know the commandments, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I've done those since birth. And Jesus said, great, then sell all you have, give it to the poor, and follow me. This is that instance where a person gets to the point, well, I'm unwilling to, or this is kind of a drag. I don't want to dedicate this much time. Essentially, you're trading all your opportunities away and giving them to those who are poor in spirit or something like that, one could say. Or some who don't have money. Maybe you're helping someone move. They can't pay movers and stuff like that. So this is where the guilt that they can throw at you can just feel like a drag. Because again, they can throw it back. You made this commitment, and that's probably the scripture they're going to go to. You're not truly turning your life over to Christ. Yeah. You still want it.
And to me, it's kind of like Sam's Club. Like, you're not really part of the club until you pay your dues and then spend your money here. As long as you're just popping in for the free samples, nobody's really feeling that. And that's kind of how I looked at most of the Christians who just popped in on Sunday morning, felt good, listened to the sermon, raised their hands to the song, and then dipped. To me, they weren't even like real a lot of them were still like on the line. It was on the line if they even think you're a real Christian, because again, real Christians live that life where they understand that there's going to be so much more to it. So I think what you're talking about is important, because this is the basis of it. This is biblical. This is what the Bible says to these people. So again, they're going to be a high demand group because that's the model they're following from the scripture. It's just that they know there's something inherently problematic about it, so they spin a different song and dance when there's scrutiny from the outside. Yeah, but here's what bothers me, man, the most. It's like Christians are not honest people to me, mostly because they don't want to be honest with themselves. And it's kind of like they just want to be lied to, because they should be on guard for themselves. It should concern them. In other words, they should recognize that this group is constantly demanding stuff of them, but that the way it works is you need the people to do it voluntarily. That way you can just say, hey, everybody's here of their own accord. Because what you would want the Christian to realize is there's nothing anybody can do for me so long as I keep subjecting myself to this and I'm not willing to scrutinize it or see through it. And this is the problem of religion. Even like with my own family, like I think at the end of the day, you could sit these people down, you could tell them they're being lied to, you could tell them that they're wrong, you could tell them that they're being scammed, you could tell them that they're being conned. They're more or less just going to look at you and be like, well, this is my thing, it makes me feel special, da-da-da-da-da. I'm always going to be a Christian or whatever. And at that point, I don't know what you can do. Because to an extent, the church is right. We're just following the example of Jesus. And on the flip side, everybody is here of their own accord. So the pressure amounts to, the pressure is insurmountable, I think, for most people. But legally and socially, it's no different than any other high pressure sales pitch that you can walk out the door from at any time.
I want to encourage everyone listening to, at some point, you can find it on YouTube, listen to the recording from Jonestown, where Jim Jones is telling his congregation to basically kill themselves. There's no hope left. Drink your medication, he would say. So it wasn't Kool-Aid they were drinking, it was Flavor Aid. And a lot of people saw that things were hopeless and agreed with him and drank it willingly. There are people giving this to their children, themselves. And he just keeps over and over saying, oh, this is all hopeless. Now, he's not drinking it. Later, to spoiler alert, he tries to escape on a plane. But it finally got to the point where people were at gunpoint. Those who realized, no, wait a second, this isn't right, they're at gunpoint now. There are people who take it too far on their own, and there are people who are pushed to take it too far. And we all have heard in the news, maybe not recently, but it's been in the news, so-and-so killed an abortion doctor because they felt they were compelled by their Christian beliefs. The Bible doesn't tell you to do that. It doesn't say, well, the New Testament, Jesus isn't telling you to go kill anybody. Jesus does the killing in Revelation. That's his job. Him and a few friends on horses. So you can get the idea that a person can feel that they are chosen to carry out certain horrible things, not the beautiful things where there's some doctor that sells all this stuff and goes to a third world country and, basically his meals come from his patients and he and his whole family are there, and they just take care of people because they really embraced that part of the Christian message, to be there for other people and support other people and spread the gospel that way, rather than I'm going to see if I can't get another Rolls Royce before I start tithing, or see if I can't get this or that. You know, I look at the Kenneth Copelands, who has so much, and is that better for him to have more money than he will ever spend, or for him to build schools and feed people with the money he can never spend, right? He's worth over $700 million, they say. Well, if that's true, he probably could deal with about 20 million, because he owns a lot of property. So, he's a minister. He doesn't pay property tax probably. He doesn't pay any payroll taxes, federal income tax. So there's a lot of potential there to do good, but it's not used that way. It's for him to, you have that clip of him laughing. So yeah, that's just his way. He's not going to give up. Joel Osteen, probably not having schools and orphanages and hospitals in third world countries. He could do that and never miss the money. That's not what he's doing. So I think for any Christians watching, you have to look at your leaders and say, now, wait a second, this person has the potential to give away 90% of their wealth and still be comfortable. And they could give it away to, some very wonderful causes. But if they're not doing that, you already know, you can know right there what they really think of your religion. Not their religion, your religion. Because you're just another drop in the bucket for them. A very large bucket. Keep putting your money in there. Keep writing that check. Keep sending those cards and letters and cash. All that stuff. They don't genuinely, I'm telling you, I would challenge any of them to prove it. They don't genuinely care.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue. I was stuck for a moment on that doctor, because I'm at a point now where the quote unquote good ones are the problem, right? Because like, to me, like, yeah, it's crazy. They're almost like sacrificing themselves for the benefit of the Ken Copelands of the world. There's nothing holding this thing. There's nothing holding this thing up anymore. It feels weird. I feel like I'm living in a time that it's difficult for me to accept. I feel like I'm living in a time in history where somehow we're not post-religion socially, even though like the jig is up. And so yeah, this is all really intense for me. All right, let's see how much more we can get through. This is really interesting. There's a lot. I want to make sure I don't keep us going forever here.
So for anyone in their upper tiers of leadership to dare claim that people get to choose, no, especially those who have been a part of the church for any meaningful amount of time, beyond a couple months even, scaling back what you do is tantamount to sin. And not just, I looked a little bit too long at some titties, or, I, forgot to give a few dollars to something, or, I told a lie, like a white lie or something. No.
It's a fantastic point.
Scaling back your involvement, you might as well fuck somebody else that's not your spouse. You might as well have committed assault on the weekend. Like, people freak out. Yeah. It's like the worst thing is happening to your relationship dynamics within the group. They view you as potentially apostate for just wanting to do a little bit less than everyone else. And at the end of the day, if you maintain your position of what you do and don't want to do in the group, they will question your salvation. They'll say, if you can't exercise your faith to be as involved as us, we're not sure you're saved. You may be on a ticket to hell.
Pause it. All right. So at one church that I went to, I was in the parking ministry. I think I've said this on the podcast before. If you want to see who's really coming to church, join the parking ministry.
Wow.
People are so effing nasty. Just nasty. The sense, and I'm in Los Angeles, right? So we have a few celebrities coming. So you'll be told so-and-so is coming. I'll name somebody. Meg Ryan is coming.
Right.
So make sure she gets a good space. The guy in charge of the parking ministry puts out a cone. Here's where we're going to park her. We don't know what she's going to show up in or who she's going to show up with. Park her there. Fine. Meg Ryan shows up. I get to talk to her. She's lovely. She goes to her space. Someone in the ministry shows up that isn't the chief minister. Well, where can I park? There's a space right there. And they're pointing out these spaces like, well, that's for people who are pregnant or you know, they have disabilities, or maybe there's a woman here that's 87 years old. That's for people like that. And they're so offended.
Can I tell you something
that they're not a VIP?
Can I tell you something that's crazy about that? And it's kind of, I think there's a spectrum. It reminds me of like, okay, here's what I'm getting at. I don't want to be ambiguous. It reminds me of all the stuff you see, like that I've seen in two roles. One, as a worship minister, and as part of like the worship team, and two, as like the pastor's grandson, right? So I'm around everything before church starts, right? And then you're around everything after church is over, right? So the way you really, you want to see pastors do and say some crazy shit, oh yeah, all you got to do is be in the pastor's office before or after church, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's that chunk in the middle that's church, and everybody's on their best behavior. And so what it reminded me of is you are in this interesting space in the parking ministry where somehow, even though you're on church property, right, and you're part of the church ministry, and people know, like they just pulled into the church parking lot, and then they rolled up to somebody the church assigned to park them, help them park in the church's parking lot. So they know, right? But here's what's weird. They're not on yet. They're not on yet. They're not in church mode,
That's
right?
A fantastic point.
The show has not begun yet.
The chemicals.
Yeah, the curtains
the
have
chemicals
not,
in their body.
Yeah, the curtain has not gone up. They're still in off mode. And so you see like who they really are. But somehow, as soon as they get that car parked and they're done cursing at you and they walk through that church doors, all of a sudden they're in holy, righteous Christian mode and they're treating everybody well. But you're right. As part of the parking ministry, you get to see who they are just before they flip that switch on into their righteous personality.
To pair this with what Niddy is saying, when there weren't enough volunteers, you got to hear that. I would go volunteer for parking, then do a service, go attend a service, and then probably go home after I talked to my fellow parking ministry people and some, friends and people I was happy to see. Then I'd go home. But there would be this, right now we really need more people to volunteer, blah, 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 blah. When they were short, I get asked, like, hey, do you mind doing 2 services in parking today? Well, I don't really want to, but I'll do it because I respected the guy who was running the parking ministry, So I would absolutely, I'll do it. I don't really want to, but I'll do it. And then I just go home. And this was an uncompensated position, other than you get like a ticket to get a free CD for the sermon you missed out on, or a free tape for the sermon you missed out on.
Oh, right, because you're out there the whole time, even during the whole service. Oh, wow, okay.
I missed every song.
This was a real parking ministry, not one of them just before service and then people are on their own.
I forget how many thousands of people went there in the 3 morning services.
Oh yeah, so you're out there all day. I think something like
4,000 or 5,000 people. Now,
yes.
Me, because I took it seriously, I would park far away, even across the street in this garage that they rented. I would park there sometimes because I would see the mother and father trying to negotiate their 3 kids or something like that. And 2 of them are quite small and they're carrying one and one's, I would see that. I would see the people get out and maybe I'd have to help somebody get into their walker,
right?
Help lift them out of their car so they can go in. There were moments like that I saw where I realized, you know what, I'm able-bodied. I'll walk.
Right.
I'll walk.
Right.
I don't ever want to take one of these people's places.
Right.
And we got to the point over time we would put more and more of those reserve spaces out for people who were having a hard time getting in the building because they kept showing up. We had an aging congregation, so we kept accommodating them. But the folded arms and the do you know who I am's,
right.
Which is my favorite root vegetable. Do you know who I am? Yeah. We don't even have a space. So you got to go to the parking garage. Don't worry, the van will pick you up.
Oh no, not with the common folk. No, not with the mouth breathers. No.
Yeah, with demons. I never heard anybody say go Kenneth Copeland on us. But it was as you say, they weren't on yet.
Yes. Yeah.
Not all of them.
Right.
And who knows what kind of awful day they may have had. Their Lasso Opso may have died that morning or something like that. And I don't know. Right. But I just see by the time I get them, they're not who you want them to be anymore.
Yeah. All right, man. Awesome stories. Also, thanks, Paulie B. Appreciate that, man. It is something to, he said, he's been an atheist and never had to go to church. But he has an immense amount of respect for people able to break away. I think it's a crowning achievement in somebody's life to be able to, break away from a religion you were raised in.
What parts of that are not pressure? And what really makes me pretty sad sometimes is that people that I have an intimate connection with will say, didn't see it this way and still don't. What church have you been a part of this whole time? I don't get that vibe. I feel like it's all grace and love and we should be motivated by that. I mean, okay, but maybe you are somehow, but in practice, especially in the collegiate age, which is when you're most primed to be indoctrinated and move your lifestyle and your commitment and invest yourself in a group like this, you're treated this way. So in this email exchange that I wanted to talk about, it's a 40-year-old woman in email correspondence with like an 18 or 19-year-old young woman. And her name is Chris. And this student in college is like living with 5 or 6 early 20-somethings, and one of them, probably about her age, is the house leader. And I've explained this before on my channel, but here's how the relationship dynamics work in this place. The house leader is mom. It's a new mom. You get a new mom. Sometimes people in the house will lovingly describe their house leader as the mama hen. But really, in reality, that mom is a wolf. That mom is a deputized authoritarian and tattle. Why do I say that? Because in order to move in with this spiritual mother wolf, you have to sign paperwork that says you're going to go to all the same meetings as everyone else. You're going to read your Bible every day. You're not going to look at the boobies and dicks on the internet. You're not going to date outside the church. You're going to tithe a certain amount. You're going to be super duper committed.
Pocket locker.
And you're also going to agree.
I am, by him talking about this mother, I am reminded of the scripture, zeal for thy house has eaten me up. Maybe that's where it comes from. I don't know.
Agree to be, you're going to have a curfew. Because what says independent adulthood? Like a curfew. Oh, right. And you can't have members of the opposite sex or people you confess to be attracted to in your room alone. Because what says adult independence and trust? Like being in a glorified sorority playpen. It doesn't say shit about being independent and learning trust, relationship dynamics, and how to be an adult. Because everyone is just too hopped up and fucking horny to talk to anyone of the opposite sex without divine intervention or house mom going, no, can't have the boy in the room.
Pause it.
What's kind of hilarious.
Go ahead.
I'm going to tell Niddy where they're coming from. The idea is to, an obedient Christian adult conforms.
Yeah, and most of them, and again, this is the problem of them volunteering for their own demise. They say they're going to say they want that. The church, all the church is going to do is pressure them to feel like they should want to do more. That's it. Now, once they feel like they should want to do more, they'll convince themselves they, in fact, want to do more, right? Because that's the moral good at that point. You should want to do more. Oh, should I want to do more? What do you know? I want to do more, right? So then I'm like, oh, you've got the housing available for me to be holy, and then I don't have to even worry about boys being around, and then what? And there's a church mother to make sure I'm on task and to guide my spiritual life and to make sure I don't slip up. What? And a bunch of female Christian companions to hang out with to make sure that life is smooth and easy, and I have other people going through the church. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, sign me up. And then when we like, yo, man, this is a cult, and y'all really need to stop ruining people's lives like this. They're like, no. See here, where we told them exactly what was going on, and they said sign me up, and then they signed here, and we laid all this out, and the thing that they signed, and they enthusiastically signed it. Yeah, I don't know what seems to be the problem. And then we're like, yeah, it's gonna be tough. But yeah, that's the problem. We literally have to convince people to care about being manipulated.
Well, see,
yeah.
Wait a minute. Now that's pretty powerful what you said, because I think there's more than one side to it. One of my high school chums put something on her Facebook that was something on the order of Christians are at war. I've said it before. This is problematic. And one of the reasons our society is the way it is this idea that Christians are at war. People in politics using the term fight. You got to fight for this, fight. You are priming the human mind to be unhappy, to be in a state of readiness and be more reactionary than logical. And when you do that, you end up with a society that is more reactionary than logical. Turn on the news. That's all you need. It's all you need, right? These people who go shoot up schools and malls and stuff like that, they're not being logical. They are being reactionary. So what the reply was when I asked, what is the war? Like, who is the war against? And I went on to explain, in most countries, Christians have control politically. They are the leaders of most countries. The Christians have many churches where they can lean on each other in terms of finding free or inexpensive childcare. getting help paying their bills, help finding jobs. And I went and detailed all these advantages that lie within Christianity. Who are you fighting a war against? Well, the replies came back, not just her. Well, we're fighting a war against Satan. Now, to me, that's a ridiculous thing to say. It's ridiculous for me to read. It's not a ridiculous thing to say. That's what they're being taught. They're giving me the answer and framing it within their worldview, which is a Christian worldview. Now, to me, where's that guy at? Satan is put on earth to corrupt human beings. I'm like, I don't think, and I responded to someone who said something on that order. I don't think human beings need any help being corrupt. I don't. Now, what I didn't say is, how do you know your minister is not corrupt? Or devils, whatever, demons tormenting your minister so that he or she says corrupt things to you or behaves in a way that is unsavory? We know that happens to some individuals, and I don't think it's a demon egging them on. Hey, be a jerk to this person. Don't help this person. See how cute that woman over there is? Or, hey, don't you like guys too? And you know, there's that guy. He seems to like you. You know, who knows? But that's sort of the mindset that comes about. I don't think it's a healthy one. But yeah, I don't realize that there isn't a demon out there trying to influence them. It's not that way. They're told that they can believe in that stuff. They should believe in that stuff. Even if you don't believe in it, you're told that's the reality of how the world really functions. The Bible gives you this. The apocryphal books, some of them, they go into it. They talk about how,
And this puts us in a difficult situation, because if I sat down and said, my one black friend, you and I don't like each other, well, you could say, well, I think that's a misunderstanding, and maybe there's been some sort of disagreement. I don't dislike you, right? And then, I don't dislike you either. Oh, okay, well, that turns out to be, that was easy, right? But what do you do when someone says, I'm at war with people like you? Yeah, no, it's a bit different, because, sitting down across from you might be very risky for me. And then if you insist that there's this whole other realm, demons and gods and ghosts and magic, and I think that puts you, so now you've given me two things. Now you've given me, you're at war, I suspect it might be against people like me, and then also I'm now convinced that you don't live in the same reality that I do. Right. Yeah. So now you're scary to me. This is what I mean. These people are they're scary to me, because they'll act that out, right? They might act out that, you know what I'm saying? Like, again, like, I think, for instance, they'll make laws against groups they feel threatened by, like minority groups and trans people, right? So we see that. So now when we see that intent, we're like, when people are like, oh yeah, come to the table so we can collaborate, work together, negotiate, I'm like, yeah, I don't, me being in the same room as them guys doesn't seem to work out well for me. So yeah, this is the real challenge of how this all plays out, I think, in the bigger picture. Let's try to get through some more of this.
Is that Christians want it both ways. They want each of their lay believers to be indwelt with this all-powerful spirit that should prevent them from sinning in the first place and not getting busy and freaky in their bedroom with someone of their attraction. And yet they need these authoritarian parents to be like, nah, don't let that boy upstairs. Do you not believe in the power of God to lead this poor, horny young person out of sin? No? Oh, I'm sad for you. But no, seriously, think about it. And this house leader is tasked with the duty of reporting the spiritual health of the house to her home church leaders. And those home church leaders report the spiritual health of that house to their sphere leader, which is some man behind the curtain looking over like a dozen or so home groups or whatever.
Yeah, this is the manipulation of that position carrying
to the top brass.
Hey, Maya.
So, hey, you sleep with someone you're not supposed to, well, your house leader finds out, then your home church leader finds out, then the sphere leader finds out, and they figure out how to discipline you.
And this is the knowledge reports of fucking
and where did it start?
Scientology.
It started with Mama being like, you did what this weekend? You went out with a boy that's not in the church? I bet you fucked him.
Oh, and here's the great part about that. Now the guilt is in play. And then what's the guilt in play? Well, you don't, you could say you're sorry. Of course, everybody says they're sorry when they make a mistake, but most of us want to make it right. And
the guilt is always in play.
Right, and that's
you again, it's built into the faith. It's built right in there.
Exactly.
And maybe guilt is I don't know, maybe guilt is one of the true gods.
But I only bring it up to say that becomes a mechanism for them to then demand, not even have to demand more from you. Right? It's like a partner, right? When you upset your romantic partner, you could say you're sorry, right? But you really want to make it right or make it better, right? So typically you go out of your way to do something to make it up. It's not a bad thing. It's part of maintaining and enhancing relationships, right? You're trying to remind them of how you really feel about them, in light of what happened. And you're gonna do that same thing, especially when all eyes are on you, because again, you've got your whole life wrapped up in this group and these leaders and these people, and so now, of course, you're gonna double down on your commitment and service, and this is how they get to demand more of you while not actually taking responsibility for demanding more from you.
One of my mentors, Rhonda, who shall be named, she said to me, and I thought this was so wise. She said, pain is the great teacher. So I would say people feeling guilt, because guilt is a form of pain, is part of that. It is an excellent reformer for some people, not for all people. But yeah, I'd say keep that in mind too.
Absolutely.
What were you doing out so late other than getting into sin with him? We were just at a house party. Oh yeah? Who saw you there? Like, what the fuck? What? That is control. That's pressure. And that's exactly what these houses do. At least at a sorority, like people could actually make their own decisions about what they want to do as adults. Mm-hmm. No, not these houses. So I don't care how my former fellowship tries to write this off and say, well, yeah, most of our groups don't do this. Most of our adults don't behave this way. And you know what? For the people who are married and have their own jobs and are a part of the adult ministry, yeah, sure, it is a bit more relaxed. But how did we get here? How did 80% or probably more of the adults still in that damn church get there? Through the manipulation and control of the college group. They're so sunk in and invested through their youth, they don't have anywhere else to go. The damage and the abuse is already done. And they're totally fine endorsing the next generation to go down to those college groups. They're going to raise them up in their ways, and they're going to make more little deputized authoritarians to fuck up the minds and abilities and the autonomy of a whole nother generation. And you know what? By the time that they make it through that, they're going to be like, The college group was amazing. I want my kids to do it too. I sure as hell don't. But hey,
Facts.
So in this email exchange, there's some gems I want to highlight that are pretty difficult to read, but I think are instrumental in us figuring out, is this shit biblical, culty? I'll let you guys be the judge, chat. This will be fun. And by fun, I mean absolutely terrifying and disturbing. So let's go to this one here.
All right, yeah, let's try to get through this.
Here? Let's
I gotta go at 5:30. This is so good, though.
Make me super tiny. All right. So here, the blue is the 40-year-old woman wanting to talk to this 19-year-old, right? And she said, the 19-year-old says, "Hey, the women in my house, and especially the leadership, are trying to act like new parents to me. And instead of going, hey, maybe we should look at this relationship dynamic you got going on here. Maybe there is some kind of problem with that. Nope. Here's what the 40-year-old woman has to say. It's not about how you went about last weekend. It's the content of what you were saying. You were talking like the house is controlling and the house leaders are parent-like. These are serious accusations." I mean, I kind of agree, but if your goal is to make healthy adults that understand consent, understand themselves, you don't need another parent that's not your parent, right? You need other autonomous adults, life experiences to grow up yourself. She says in this next one, let's look at this next one. This one's pretty fuckety too. What we got here? This is the 40-year-old again. My point here is not that you were sharing negative things about the house, but that you were saying things that weren't true. Look, I told you how the ministry house dynamic works. If a 19 or 18-year-old person who just moved in walked up to me and was like, "Hey, Niddy, I think my house leader is kind of trying to be my dad or my mom," I'd be like, "I believe you. I totally believe you. Let's get you out." It will also be hard for you to paint a positive vision for the ministry house because you've never really been a good ministry house member. I've never seen you really try from the heart to live out the vision the ministry house covenant lays out. Have you looked at the house covenant?
Unto you I give a new covenant.
You can pray down through that. Also, 1 Corinthians 12 and 13 on true body life and true love. Think about how that applies to the ministry house and ask God to show you how to live that out. Gang,
should be waiting.
This
for
is
some
just
time.
Someone has reoriented their life goals to live with an uncomfortable amount of people in a dirty ass house. And you're gonna say, "You never really tried.
You never really tried."
Do you know? Put yourself back in your 18 and 19-year-old shoes. Do you know how much it is of a fucking leap of faith to move in with a bunch of yokels your age and potentially not have anywhere else to live? Sorry, I get really mad at this part of it because these young people are put into this living situation, which, by the way, is extremely financially subsidized by how they break the renting laws and cram people in there. And they're also de-incentivized to work an adequate amount of hours to live anywhere else. And so this is what happens. It's not just the condescension and abuse from up high. It becomes a threat that if you do not comply, if you don't read our house covenant, if you're not backed by curfew, if you're not at all the meetings with us, you're on the street, bitch. Or you're going back to your parents' house, which may or may not be close to college for you. Please tell me in the comments, chat, whatever, what parts of that are not manipulation and control, or at least extremely traumatic.
They want you to be financially dependent on the church.
The person doesn't comply, and you know what else is pretty fucked? They task the roommates and the leaders to give an ultimatum. You move out or we move you out. They'll make you pack your things. They will watch you pack your things and put them out of the house for you if you don't do it. I just want you to imagine yourself trying to go to college, trying to establish your own identity and your friend group and your place in the world, and having this shit put on you. Knowing that it's a threat to completely uproot and undermine where you're going in life, where you're able to go, what you're able to do. And without the group's backing, you're fucked. Let's see. Where's the other tab?
Notice when she shows the letter again, notice the use of scriptures. Again,
absolutely.
This is, please understand this, and I'm not saying this to be mean. This is essentially the Bible has to become, the Bible's teachings have to become the mindset. Imagine, this will sound really awful. I started to learn to program computers when I was in 5th grade. I was writing my first programs in 5th grade. I was taught in this particular line, if you don't tell it to do that, but you tell it to do this instead, see how it changes. So retype that line and watch what your program does differently. And I would see these dramatically different results. And I was really impressed by that. Giving someone a scripture when they deviate from the program brings them back into the old expected result.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what this is doing.
And this is programming.
If it's working on that person, right?
Yeah.
If they want that Christian life and someone else defines it for them, then that's what they're going to expect.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is it gives them the excuse for the abuse, and it's so disingenuous when they then act like it isn't scriptural, right? This is very problematic.
Let's see. Right. All right. Check this out. This woman says, you might need to start by confessing to God. This is what so-and-so was pointing out with Psalm 32 and Psalm 51. These were Psalms David wrote after major destructive sin, which, by the way, I have so many problems with that whole David and Bathsheba story being used by modern Christians as a model for repentance. We'll get there later on a different time.
Yeah, God ends up killing their baby.
And thanking God that he loves you, even though you've been divisive, ungrateful, and really done a lot of damage. That would actually be a great starting point for your apology to house leaders, thanking them for not kicking you out a while ago. Yeah, that's the language, folks. Not kicking you out a while ago. How is that not a threat? A constant implicit threat on this person's well-being and living situation. If I'm not in compliance, nowhere to live, kicked out. Now, I will grant that there were times that some people were moved into ministry houses that had no business getting moved into ministry houses. Fine. Totally fine. But the average person who's just trying to make it in life is not that person. It's not the person that is going to get kicked. Is not going to take the threat of getting kicked out well. I really want you to experience the good, full life that Jesus promises his followers. I believe you're capable of doing this. Like I've said the whole time, you're sharp and strong-willed. And frankly, we need you to be spiritual and engaged in the house. You can do a lot of good here, but we're not going to tolerate this anymore. Basically, the girl was like, just...
And you better be glad we didn't kick you out a while ago.
Honestly, I'm still not sure what I think about you staying in the house. Yes, the 40-year-old woman that helps lead a group of 20-somethings is helping dictate where someone can live. Cult! Say it with me, everyone.
Cult.
There's no legal
Say it a lot,
process
guy. You
here.
got to let these Christians know what it is.
Financial considerations or considerations of the mental health or well-being of the person they're talking to. No. Kick you out, no options, and the people not living with you get to completely decide whether or not you get to live there. That's what this church wants. Mm-hmm. To abuse young people into staying in it. I ain't got no time for that. And I hope you guys don't either. Yeah. So that's all I have to say about that. I read that email and was like, what is wrong with these guys? Seriously. Like, being that old and feeling like I need to control some other person that's not my child, that needs to grow up and be an adult and live on their own, do their own thing. If it really is about finding your place in Jesus and his mission through this church, that email has no business existing.
Exactly, Carrie Ann. You're always a piece of shit in God's LARP.
Should never have happened. But this is where we are.
Appreciate you, Paulie.
So on a much lighter note, here's the plan for the rest of the evening. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this and listening or doing whatever it is you did while I ranted about this.
Yeah, gang. Don't forget, Niddy does a dance party every weekend in Gather. But yeah, this was a fantastic video. Really, really good job, Niddy. But yeah, go ahead, my one black friend. What are your thoughts on all that?
Oh, sure. Well, for the most of us are not Christians, so let's deal with it from that standpoint, because we may know somebody going through this, where they're in a cult and they don't see it, or they're seeing cultish behavior and they don't know what to do. I would say the Socratic method is probably the best way to, I'd say, listen. I want to say deal with them. I want to say guide with them, but listening is the better thing to do, because it may not be time for them to make up their mind about what they're going through. They may need to see a little more or do a little more before they're at that step. I would say begin with the favorite question I was ever asked: what do you want? Once you understand what their goal is, you can help them define it more, because maybe I just want to be happy. Okay, what does it take to be happy? What needs to change? so they can go out and sit with you for a while and really work through that and figure that out. Because maybe for them, they'll decide that staying where they are is what's going to make them happy. Or maybe they need a way out. Maybe, well, can you help me look for a new place to stay? And you start going on the different resources for that, and you help them, and maybe you have to help them move too, to get them out of that situation. You got to be willing to do that, or at least help them with the resources so that they can do that. I don't know if I'm frozen or not. Am I frozen?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. you're reading the chat. I'm not so quick to read the chat.
Yeah, it's, I think the Socratic method definitely helps, especially with the person who's genuinely curious. I'm also inclined to say you should make people feel bad. It was just a big part of me. Like, a big part of me no longer wanting to identify with Christians was I found myself in a situation where Christians were clearly the bad guys. And it became an icky association. And I think part of the problem is people have, it's the self-esteem. It's the comfort blanket. Christianity is the thing they put forward when they need a mechanism to make other people make them feel good about themselves. To me, that's what Christianity really is. It's really about a person's individual need to feel like they're a better person than the rest of us. Yeah. And to me, when you really make a person feel like, I mean, you can be a true believer if you want, but it kind of make me feel like I need to take a shower. I think it undermines that person's position, and they might get a little defensive, and they might be, but ultimately, I think this is what we have to do, and it kind of harkens back to Christians feeling like they're at war. You can't. If a person's willing to act out of a true conviction that they're at war with you, what you actually need to do is defend yourself. Now, you may wish to find yourself in a situation where you could negotiate a peaceful truce and come to a genuine understanding here, but you don't control enough of the situations to dictate whether or not that's feasible. In the same way, part of the dangers of Christianity is that it conditions its members through cult-like tactics, because it's a cult, to be positively reinforced in their sort of conditioning with that part of their identity. And so there may not be a comfortable way for you to break that association, because that's what the cult has done. The cult has put so much positive identity on its falsehoods that you may have to say, hey, I hate to break it to you, but this isn't true, and they're not really the good guys, and I hate to say it, but a lot of our problems are kind of caused by Christians, and it'd be really great if you kind of could pay attention to that. I don't know. It's just, for me, I think there's room for, I think you do both, right? I think you can lay down that you don't agree with these people's position, and then when they sort of inevitably want you to justify why, I would turn to the Socratic method, because that's going to be the best way probably to get them to think through what they're saying. The thing is, I guess what I'm getting at is it's frustrating because it's hard, but it's not that hard. I don't know. For the most part, like I said, people haven't really ever thought through these things. The problem is they're so deep in that pit where they can't do that safely, or they won't do it. So then the challenge is doing whatever you do in a way that actually motivates them to do so. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard.
Well, the thing about it, it's going to be harder for them than it is for, those of us who are listening, because they actually have to make a decision about their situation. We have the luxury of just listening and doing a little advising and some reminding, but they're the one who see themselves as in a bit of jeopardy, and they're between a rock and a hard place. And we're sort of the one, if we're lucky, we're extending the hand to lift them out. But you have to decide when you lift them out, or how much helping are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, you can stay at my place for a couple of weeks while you get things sorted? Or, hey, how much were you paying them in rent? I could use that money. You can rent my spare bedroom. You could even have boys over or girls over, whatever you want,
right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, the tough part is you can only help. There's only so much you can do with people who are not trying to help themselves.
But if they're in a place like that, they saw that house was a way for them to advance themselves. Be that to move away from mom and dad, be that to take the next step in their Christian faith, to become more faithful, more solidly rooted in God and the scriptures, blah, blah, blah. That move to that house was supposed to give them something. And if they are moving away from that living arrangement, what is it giving them now? I mean, what won't they have, I should say? What won't they have? Where can they get it instead of getting it in that environment?
I hope they deconstruct. I think that experience for a person like that is, I hate to say it, it shows you what it's really all about. Like, there's a way here in which, for most Christians, I hear this story and part of us now is going, well, what did you think this was? Right? Like, not so much to the young person here, but the Christians who might be trying to figure out what to make of a situation like this. It's like, just like you pointed out, there's all this built into, like like Niddy pointed out, there's all this encouragement to give more and more and more and more of your life to Christ. And you're in this church that I'm sure celebrates these ministries, celebrates these ministry houses, encourages people to be in these type of groups, encourages this type of accountability throughout its ministry. They plant the seeds of all of this very strategically and deliberately. And then, like you pointed out, they use the Bible as justification to gaslight these people. I mean, they're telling this person, you really should be sorry. You should thank them for not having kicked you out already, and all of this type of stuff. It's just very hard for me to accept that most Christians don't see the problems with these sort of groups. It really is scary. Really, really scary stuff. But also, like, these people really are putting themselves in position of authority over young adults, and they're using these ancient texts to justify, trying to get them to live in the past. This is really scary stuff. I don't know. My one black friend, what I'm really thinking about is, to be honest, this is what so many of our family members are dealing with. But I don't know how to get them to see all that this ideology has demanded of them. And this is the soft culting that I sometimes speak of. Go ahead.
Well, I'd say your family situation is unique because of your mother's association to ministry and your grandparents being in ministry, and wow, that's heavier than it sounds. Literally, your grandparents, their meaning is rooted in ministry. Their beingness is in ministry. That's who they are. That's what they do, night and day and night. So for them, can they change at this point? Is there a value? Is there a value to it? Because they are not, like most Christians, latent Christians. If Jesus came down and started quizzing these people, if he ever existed, if he came down and started quizzing people on what Christianity means, he's going to figure out, holy crap, why the atheists, why do they know so much? And the people with the crosses around their neck, why do they know so little?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're lost to history, and I think the problem is so many Christians in our lives are this way because they're committed to staying their Christian cause above all else. And at some point,
it's their version that they're committed to.
Yeah.
Just like the person in the letter, right? The people in the letter. Each one is committed to their own version of Christianity, not Christianity. You will probably never meet a Christian, and I might not. Well, I already met one, but you're probably not going to meet a lot of them in your life. You're going to meet a lot of people who profess to be Christians. Great big difference sometimes.
Right.
Great big difference. So I think that's something you have to keep in mind. Is there's a spectrum. There's always a spectrum.
The other thing too is, well, that's what I meant, kind of. I think. So one of the phenomena they talk about with Christianity is soft culting. It's one of Christianity's superpowers. It allows you to take more extreme forms of religion, think about what your church doesn't demand of you, and then say those other religions are the cult. So if you're the everyday Christian listening to this story, you think, well, my church doesn't demand that I live in a single gender household, and I don't have a church mother overseeing my decision making, and I don't find myself on a supervisory email chain if I slip up. So clearly my church isn't one of those problematic cult churches, right? But people miss the purity culture within everyday Christianity. In other words, like for instance, I see in the way my mother talks about her childhood that she clearly judged other young women who, did not share her puritanical worldview of morality, right? Or people, feel like they can't really be comfortable in a romantic relationship unless that partner also shares their particular religious proclivities, right? Or they feel guilt over masturbating, or they feel guilt over, messing around with people on dates. Like there's all this perniciousness that people overlook because they can say, well, I'm not in one of those groups that makes people do X, Y, or Z. The other thing that's interesting is it sort of goes overlooked, the culture that this establishes for everyone involved, because there's a lot of messaging and a lot of quote unquote being made an example of, to where this particular young person is the center of the story, but everybody else in that house is participating in this, right? So they've had probably house meetings about this particular person's behavior, or, the other people in the house see how that person has been talked about or how they have been addressed, and so that sends a very clear signal to everybody: you better not get caught up in this foolishness yourself. So there's a lot going on, but this is control. It's manipulation. It's psychological abuse. And what I find problematic is most believers would find themselves in a position of trying to defend the church and all this. And even if they do throw this church under the bus, they won't make the connection to how this is a natural result of religion just like theirs, rather than some radical extremist, particular organization. This was really good. I'm really glad Niddy did this, and I hope to keep following along with this Dwell story. Man, it really highlights the inner workings of some of these more high demand groups. But I think if you look inside, of a lot of contemporary Christian organizations and a lot of churches, if you look hard enough, you will find this sort of thing in that group. If not, you'll definitely find the sort of same values and ethics in the messaging of the organization. So they may not demand that you live in an all-female household, but they will they will like scorn you or make you feel guilty for hanging out with men you're not married to, right? Or what you may have been doing Saturday night before you showed up on Sunday morning, and all of this type of stuff. So they're going to hit you with the same sauce, and you got to pay attention to that.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, my one black friend, you got any closing thoughts for us here?
I want everybody to have a really awesome week.
Have a great week, man. Do the thing. We'll be in Gather. We're going to watch the playoffs tonight, so I think we'll do our meeting at around 8 so we can watch the game at 8:30. Otherwise, people will be hanging out, and we'll see you next time. As always, be good to yourselves.
And each other.
Later.